Okay, so we analyzed all the Ayurvedic elements included in LUMNA, and we made a chart of how they affect human physiology from the Ayurvedic standpoint. Could you share more about this? And I just wanted to preface this by saying that, it's going to get pretty detailed. So this is mainly for Ayurvedic practitioners who are interested in how LUMNA is affecting the body. And we have included a chart that shares all the details on this, and it can be found in the Ayurvedic practitioner section of the resources section on our website. So,
yes. Yeah. So I'm going to describe it in broad strokes because all the details are in the charts, and any Ayurvedic practitioner will be able to understand and speak that language. But essentially, just kind of going back to a previous question, you always have to start in Ayurveda with the gunas. So the qualities of each of the constituents, because those gunas, again, are going to either balance or imbalance certain doshas or constitutional types. So both of those are focused on how do these constituents affect, like, what's the balance of the gunas, and then how does it affect the doshas? And each constituent is different. So, that's where the synergy of the whole formulation comes in, because you can't just focus on one constituent and say, oh, this increases kapha, can't give it to my client, because it's a lot bigger than that. But so that's kind of where we start. And then I focused on how they affect specific tissues, tissue types called dhatus, as well as the channels or the strotansi. The main tissue types I focused on is the blood and the plasma, which are two separate tissues in Ayurveda. It's like red blood cells versus the plasma or the serum. Again, because these constituents are being taken up by the skin. The skin is thought of as an upadhatu, or a sort of emanation of the blood and plasma, as well as the muscles or the connective tissue, which I'm going to get to. But again, these constituents are circulating, so I wanted to focus on how the constituents are affecting the blood and plasma tissues, how they affect the connective tissues, which includes mamsadhatu, which is muscle, and sinews, or tendons, ligaments, things like that, and asthi dhatu, which is the bones, but that also affects the joints and, again, the ligaments in particular. And then the big one in terms of tissue type that I focused on was majja dhatu, which is the nervous system, because of course all of our products focus on the nervous system, and because that's where most of the imbalances that we're working with are occurring. So I focused on how each of those constituents affect, again, those connective tissues or those different tissue types. And then, like I said earlier, the mind is thought of as a channel in Ayurveda. It's not centered in the brain or anywhere else. The brain is part of that channel, but it's only part of it. So I also focused on how each of or many of the constituents affect the channel of the mind. Those are called midya herbs, or herbs that affect the mind. So broad strokes, that's kind of what we focus on, because that's what we're targeting with our therapies. The other thing that I focused on, because I think it's really critical and sometimes overlooked in Ayurvedic medicine, is how they work on the level of prana, tejas, and ojas. I know we're getting into the weeds with the language, but those are basically, that's the cellular level. So instead of just focusing on the tissue types or the channels, also, how is it affecting the physiology at the cellular level? Because again, in Ayurveda, all disease, and even in Western medicine, all disease starts at the cellular level. So there's this sort of subtle underlying milieu that we're also analyzing in terms of how it balances those. And I think we have a question later where I'll get into more detail on those. But cellular level, tissue level, channel level, and again, targeting the various tissues or channels that are relevant or applicable to what we're doing.
I'm just smiling because I just love how comprehensive Ayurveda is, and the more that we talk about it, the more it's reinforced.
Super comprehensive. It's super comprehensive. That's why when people say it's not scientific, I'm like, it's like your definition of science, but I would say it's like the OG science, really, and really, really, really complex.
And artful.
And artful. Yeah, absolutely.